It is time. Research shows that climate change and natural disasters will push 132 million people into poverty by 2030 and cause 216 million people to migrate internally by 2050. Climate change is devastating millions of lives, livelihoods, health, food, and water security, infrastructure, cities, and environments around the world. It is time to accelerate action to meet our 2030 goals and set up the frameworks we need to get to net zero by 2050. We have the chance, perhaps a last chance, to innovate for climate, to move faster towards a green, resilient, and inclusive recovery. The World Bank Group is today the largest financier of climate action in developing countries. In 2021 alone, we delivered over $26 billion of climate finance. We are helping countries transition away from coal, restore nature, make the leap to renewable energy and clean transport systems, transform food systems, build clean, green, and resilient cities, strengthening local capital markets, and greening domestic financial sectors. In our new Climate Change Action Plan, we commit to the importance of integrating climate and development. We are moving from investing in green projects to greening entire economies and from inputs to measuring impacts. We are stepping up on finance through new targets and have a commitment to aligning finance flows with the Paris Agreement. At I4C, we bring together leaders from finance, markets, policy and technology to accelerate climate action, and people to facilitate a global exchange of knowledge, to showcase tried and tested solutions, to demonstrate how climate-smart investments can create jobs for the future. Welcome to the World Bank Group's I4C conference, transforming dialogue into action. Together, we will shape a greener, more inclusive and resilient world. It is time. Welcome to I4C 2022.
Hello and welcome to Innovate for Climate 2022. I'm delighted to be back. This is the second time I've had the privilege of hosting this flagship climate action event. And as before, we're broadcasting to you from here in London. Now, the video we've just seen emphasises the importance of coming together to share ideas and innovation in order to accelerate action. And it also shows the urgent work that's required to provide solutions in all countries so that peoples and communities everywhere can recover from the pandemic and look to a thriving future. Now, we've seen a lot of progress, but this is the moment to leverage the momentum achieved around COP26. And what better time as we head rapidly towards COP27? Innovation is going to be the key to success as we rebuild and transform our economies, making them greener, more resilient and inclusive. Over the next 3 days at Innovate for Climate, we are going to be showcasing the most promising low-carbon, resilient innovations, policies that are already working for developing countries. This is the organisation's 6th year, and I know, we said that we were going to be with you in person in Barcelona this time round, but events. So let's all keep our fingers crossed for 2023. This is our second virtual event. And as before, we're broadcasting to a global audience in several time zones. And I'm delighted to tell you that our audience today is larger than ever before. Over these 3 days, we're going to be bringing you 3 high-level plenaries featuring leaders from across governments and businesses and over 60 workshops sharing real-life examples of the projects, solutions and actions that are moving us to where we all want to be, a resilient, low-carbon future. Now, we encourage you to take advantage of an inspiring marketplace and do take the opportunity to network and share your ideas. Here at this year's marketplace, you're going to be able to connect with innovative startups and entrepreneurs showcasing exciting innovations in carbon removal, battery storage, AI, blockchain, and so many other cutting-edge solutions. All you have to do is complete your profile on the website and also sign up to the workshop sessions that you'd like to attend. There really is so much to choose from. For example, a report launch on youth needs for climate finance, unpacking and implementing Article 6, in which the UNFCCC Secretariat will provide an update on the current status of the implementation of Article 6's decision from COP26 in Glasgow and supporting just transitions to sustainable land use. The workshop is going to explore key questions around the need for pathways to securing this just transition. So do just make sure you check out the agenda. And what we want you to do, really more than anything, is join the discussion. So go to the community page and tag us on social media. Use the hashtag #InnovateForClimate. If you have any queries during this event, all you have to do is contact the help desk anytime using the live chat function. It really is a great pleasure to be back this year, and I, for one, am really looking forward to hearing the speakers we've lined up for you from around the world. They are going to be sharing the very best innovations, policies, and actions to accelerate the transition to a climate-smart future. Now, of course, none of this would have been possible without the support of our partners and our sponsors, and we're especially grateful to the governments of Germany and Spain, and to all of you who've contributed your time and energy to create and share some really amazing content, so thank you sincerely. Oh, and just one other thing, don't forget, everything is going to be recorded during this event and you'll be able to see it on this site until the end of August. So watch it at your leisure with a cup of tea or something stronger if that's your speed. Now, to kick this event off and to highlight the important role of the World Bank Group, who better than Axel van Trotsenburg, Managing Director of Operations for the World Bank. I'd love to welcome Axel now to open this event and to set the scene for us for Innovate for Climate 2022. Axel, it's all yours.
Thank you, Anita. Welcome everybody to Innovate for Climate, the World Bank Group's flagship event on climate smart solutions that deliver results, reduce emissions, and boost resilience. This year's I4C focuses on how we can urgently accelerate action and scale up solutions between now and 2030 to help countries build back better from multiple crises while tackling one of the biggest development challenges of our time, climate challenge. It's clear we need to act and to act fast. The connection between climate change and its impact on human well-being is increasingly visible. The poorest countries in the world are bearing the brunt of the impact while contributing the least to climate change. Recent events, including the war in Ukraine and the uneven global recovery from the pandemic, remind us again of the vital need to invest in resilience and help communities prepare for uncertainty and risk. But this is easier said than done. And while there is a lot of talk about high-level commitments, the World Bank Group is laser-focused on the doing. As our Climate Change Action Plan underscores, climate change and human development are deeply interconnected. Achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Agreement will require tremendous investment. Last year, we delivered a record of more than 26 billion in climate finance to the developing world. And this year, we are on track to exceed even that record amount. But we all need to do more. Over the next 3 days, we will bring together experts from the public and private sectors across the world of finance, markets, policy and technology to showcase opportunities, exchange knowledge, and scale up action that delivers tangible results. From those listening at home, my ask is to fully join the debate. Last year's I4C was the first ever I4C that we hosted virtually, and it was the most successful to date. We had a real wide participation from a broad set of countries. This year we hope to reach even more people with great ideas from around the world for this exchange. However, as always, we have limited time together, and as the IPCC warns us, we also have limited time to act. So let's use our time wisely. For the next 3 days, first, let's hear about solutions that are working and push ourselves to think how to scale them up. Secondly, let's talk candidly about the trade-offs and how policies, investments, and support can help countries overcome them. And third, let's put our minds together on this challenge and engage constructively to maximize impact. To kick off, I'm delighted to be here with a distinguished panel today. So let's dive right in.
That's a great idea, Axel. And diving in with us, we have Her Excellency Teresa Ribera Rodríguez, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister for the Ecological Transition and Demographic Challenge for the Government of Spain. And Patrick Graichen is with us, State Secretary for the Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Climate Action for the Government of Germany. Welcome to you. Let's, though, first of all, go back to you, Axel, because last year the World Bank Group launched a major new climate change action plan, and a core part of that was recognising the interlinking of climate and development objectives together. Just tell me, how will the new country climate and development reports, CCDRs to most of the people watching, articulate those linkages, and why is it so important?
Well, let me just get to the importance. Is we cannot analyze climate change in isolation, and particularly for developing countries, this is hugely important. Think of the Sahel zone, where you see huge challenges, poverty, fragility. You cannot analyze climate change in isolation. Similarly, when we are talking, particularly in Asian countries, about the coal exit, that needs to be seen in a much, much broader context. And therefore, the bank has always been concerned about poverty, development, and we need to embed the climate change debate also in this broader development debate. And I think what it allows you to do then is to have a much more comprehensive strategy. You can actually analyze this in a much, much broader fashion, and then be very sharp on the in the mitigation and adaptation areas. And particularly, we are pretty much all about the adaptation, longer term resilience, and therefore these reports will highlight the challenges that countries are facing, relate also the national determined contributions that are the contributions by the national governments to the climate debate, how realistic they are. And also these reports are trying to highlight the important trade-offs that governments have to make. In addition, it will help us to also prepare new operations. Our climate financing has been increasing steadily. The last year, we reached about $26 billion and will be higher this year. And about half of this is adaptation financing. So these reports will inform also our financial support in the future.
It's really very, very interesting. Madam Minister, Spain has recently been awarded 140 billion euros in recovery fund loans and grants from the European Union's Next Generation EU Fund. So with that in mind, how will Spain support economic development alongside the green transition?
We think that this is a very key issue in the time to be. So we have decided to invest 40% of this amount of money in what we consider is key from the resilience point of view when dealing with climate change effects, for the purpose of ensuring a smooth energy transition at an accelerated speed, so that we can count on a modern energy system that it is really low carbon and very convenient from the perspective of consumers, stable, predictable, and reasonable prices. And then to work on what we think it is very important for the modernization of the industry and the way we produce and consume, so circular economy. These three axes, so talking about energy transition, the full development and deployment of current technologies, but investments on the anticipation on what we know we will be needing, such as green hydrogen, offshore floating wind, or storage of electricity, are part of the issues that we are already doing. But then, going to the other environmental goods, we think it is very important to work on water, to work on green infrastructure and resilience coming from biodiversity, so restoring biodiversity, both marine, water, and land biodiversity. And as I said, taking this opportunity to organize the planning and infrastructures of water to be very efficient and to recycle and to desalt water so that we can count on additional resources and being prepared both for water stress because of droughts, but also water stress because of floods. So modeling and digitalizing the access to water and the management of water is one of our key projects. And then thirdly, as I say, circular economy, new materials, avoiding bottlenecks of the traditional materials that will be demanded for this new economy, for these new energy purposes. Inventing, promoting, working on new materials is absolutely key. We try to combine all these elements so to be sure that this means employment, innovation, industry, so that this big transformation is something that lasts and reinforces the capacity of the whole society, including the skilling and reskilling capacities and the financial and technical services that these new approaches will be demanding.
Patrick Graichen, I want to talk more about this whole of economy approach to climate change, because Germany's been showing real leadership in this field, both in its own government, linking climate and economic affairs under the same ministry, as well as some of the efforts that your country is supporting at the World Bank level. So tell me this, you're committed to using carbon markets in the transition to a low carbon economy. Just how can carbon markets bring together climate and development goals?
Well, I think it's in essence a broad policy mix that you need. And carbon markets need to play its role there. Because if the prices are not giving you the signal to go into the right direction, then all the other policy instruments, for example, subsidies or standards, they have to kind of overcome that hurdle of prices that go into the right direction. And we often have that situation also in Germany, that, for example, it is cheaper to have a gas boiler and to run that gas boiler than the heat pump that is more efficient and that can be fueled by green electricity. So what you want is carbon pricing that makes the fossil alternative more expensive, and then, which is very important, use the money to make the green alternative cheaper, and thereby basically giving the incentives to go into the right direction. That has to be part of a policy mix. So keep the social dimension and think about how to really help those that are in need also with the revenues. So in essence, it is basically signaling that what is carbon intensive is going to get more expensive, but we give you a way out there, and that's what we're going to make cheaper, and that's where you also find subsidies. And especially for those that are low income, and give them maybe even higher share of subsidy the more they need it. So that's, I think, the way to approach it. It's not the silver bullet, but it's an essential part of the overall policy mix.
Madam Minister, you've already said a series of transformative investments and reforms are at the heart of Spain's economic transition plan. So what are some of the enabling policies and innovative financing tools that could help both the public and private sectors achieve your goals?
This is a very key point, how we can ensure that the public funding does play the role of leverage to ensure that the private funding goes there where we think it could be important. And for this purpose, we need lots of things. We need clarity and confidence on what are the main goals and the credible pathways that can facilitate this transformation. We need clarity and learning process so to ensure that everybody in the financial sector, in the banking sector, any investor can identify what is really worthy with add value and what may bring some additional risk we do not want to face. So what is valuable, what is costly. And this is a learning process. We know that many of the financial institutions and the investors have been learning around the ESG principles, so environmental, social, and governance principles in any business, in any corporate. But we need to go a little bit beyond that. We need to ensure that people understand and have access to transparent information on the portfolio, on the risk, on the management of this risk and how to divest this risk to ensure that there are alternatives and to lower what it is quite intense in fossil fuels, what it is quite intense in damaging the environment, what it may be quite intense in not taking into consideration the social concerns or the social demands from the society. In that context, we have been testing and we have been building with the different partners around a strategy. What is a sustainable finance strategy? How we can ensure that anyone willing to understand where they are investing their money are taking the right decisions. And working on that can be done thanks to the fact that there are other players that have already been learning about this and that there is a strong willingness from the different private and public actors, players, to do so. We have been testing on transparency and reporting. We have been testing on clarity on the goals, as I said, in the different sectors, but we have also been testing on some additional new tools. What does this mean, green bonds? What does this mean, the application of the taxonomy rules? What does this mean, providing a context where the public procurement does send a signal, but also can build partnerships, alliance with different players, so to push forward what we need. And this is the main references that we are introducing in the sustainable finance strategy, which is about to be launched in the coming weeks, in the coming months.
Axel, let's just talk a little bit about perception here, because it's really interesting. People often hear innovation, but what they think is low carbon or mitigation. The bank has committed at least half its climate finance to adaptation. First of all, tell us why adaptation is so important and what are your priorities for adaptation finance?
Well, first of all, I think that the bank is all about long-term development, about resilience. And this is even more important so in the low-income countries. So that is also why we are putting so much emphasis on this, and that actually whole societies will need to adapt to the climate change challenges. If we actually now also see that the adaptation has to be seen in a broader context also of multiple crises. And if you think of, for example, in the Sahel or the Horn of Africa, where you have multiple crises, be it droughts, be it locusts, be it also the desertification, there is a multitude of crises that need to be adapted and on which basically countries will need to adjust in the longer term. And that is why, therefore, particularly also in the low-income countries, this adaptation agenda is so important. Now, what is also clear is that the challenge is so great that basically we will need literally trillions of dollars to do it, and the public money will not be enough for this. So one of the big challenges we collectively have is how we can actually make everybody a little bit more responsible, not only on the public sector side, but also on the private sector, and get more private financing involved on this. And this is also where the bank is coming in with its financing. You said we will dedicate half of the financing to adaptation, but it can take different forms. It can take forms of financing really to foster, for example, the regulatory framework, the incentive framework that is necessary, that the private sector comes in. And then there are the projects that needs to be financed. And very often there, I think we will need to look how we can also contribute to so-called bankable projects where also the private sector can contribute to this. And then finally, there is, of course, also the need that in terms of the financing packages, it's not only private and public, but also what are the terms. And very often in the lower income countries, we'll also need to think of what we call blended finance, where concessional financing is blended in with private or non-concessional financing. And in all these areas, we have been quite engaged on this to push this further. I think we need to keep the ambition that the challenge is that big, that we need to see how public institutions really can much more aggressively get the private sector involved. What is a good a moment was in COP26 in Glasgow, where we saw finance ministers participating, but also where financing has become a much more central part of the discussion. And I think more is needed for this, because apart from the big announcements, we need now to see how these announcements are translated into concrete action. And clearly, this will be an enormous lift for all of us. I think the bank has said we are willing to continue to increase our engagement, but we hope that we can broaden the coalition.
Patrick Graichen, Axel von Trotsenburg has just very clearly demonstrated this bouquet of crises, if you like, that we're facing. But we can't talk about crisis without discussing the devastating war in Ukraine and the possible implications for the energy and climate agenda. Just how do you see this affecting energy security questions and the rate at which countries can decarbonise?
Now, this atrocious war has not only led to a lot of pain in the Ukraine and to the people there, with lots of people fleeing out of the Ukraine to Poland, also to Germany, but it has also basically having an effect on the energy markets, that we now have high fossil fuel prices everywhere. We have high oil prices, we have high gas prices in Europe, and also high coal prices, and that is especially in oil and coal, the global market. So that is now something that everyone around the world is affected of. We will, in Germany, now double down on the energy transition. That is very clear. We've just put forward a bill to Parliament that increases our renewable energy target in the power sector up to 80% by 2030. We will come forward with measures to speed up permitting processes for wind and solar. We have another bill in preparation to speed up grids build outs, and by June, I'm planning for an efficiency package. And in essence, I think what we now need to do, and I mean, you know that we have been committing ourselves to phase out fossil fuels from Russia as soon as possible. Coal is already on the export ban. Oil is the discussion currently going on, and gas is the most difficult part. But moving out of Russian oil, coal, and gas imports, in essence, means tripling our speed on the energy transition. Because yes, it will also mean diversification. So we are looking into where can we get gas elsewhere from. Those are the discussions on LNG imports. But in essence, everything that is necessary to combat climate crisis and to speed up the energy transition is also a measure that helps to reduce our dependence on Russian imports. And it is now necessary because of those high energy prices to give people a way out of that cost burden that they now face with those high transport bills, the high fuel bills that they will face now with the high gas prices. And that's of concern everywhere in Europe currently.
Axel, can I go back to something that you were talking about a little bit earlier? In the World Bank Group's second climate change action plan released last year, the bank is making a paradigm shift, it feels like, from investing in green projects to greening entire economies. And this, I don't know, this may dovetail into what Patrick was just talking about as well. Can you give us examples of a whole of economy approach? How is the World Bank Group supporting countries to shape a green, resilient, inclusive recovery?
Well, it is very important that we don't see any more, climate projects in isolation, and that you see a small project and then you declare victory. I think the challenges are just too big, and we need to have a whole economy approach where you are actually thinking of all the effects this is having. And as I mentioned earlier, we need to think from the regulatory to the macroeconomic, to the financial sector, but in the projects also the sectoral policies. Take, for example, the coal exit. We are currently working with the South African government, with other partners, including Germany, to see how one can actually support the country in that important challenge. Now, it is one thing if you take this in isolation that you say, well, let's close that coal-fired plant. That sounds simple, but actually that the closure in itself may be the most simple. But actually what is far more difficult is that these coal-fired plants are standing in communities where communities are employed. So the whole social effects, the whole transformation of these regions has to be taken into account. In addition, you will need to embed this coal exit in an overall sectoral energy policy, where, for example, then renewables are again becoming far more important, and how one can actually then have the appropriate policies in place and finance in place to actually stimulate this transition. So this is one example where we will need to think in a much broader economy-wide approach than just narrowly saying, well, I do a small project that seems to help in climate change. I think the ambition has to be much greater. I think what also is a real challenge, and I see it also in our internal discussion, is what I always say is you need to DNA the whole climate agenda in everything we are doing, so that you do that from the concept onwards through the whole implementation. And that requires also a change in the mindset on how when we have projects under preparation, take that into account, take a much broader aspect on this. And therefore, these CCDRs are going to be helpful because they put the whole thing in first in an analytical perspective, but also provide much clearer guidance on the trade-off decisions that governments have to be taken, but also that can be useful in our policy dialogue with governments.
Madam Minister, Spain launched its Just Transition strategy back in 2019 and published the latest update in September last year. So what has been the reaction to the strategy so far from labour groups, employers, miners? How does Spain intend to handle this complicated transition?
This has been one of the most important and I would say most emotional tasks we have been dealing with. because we are convinced that such a big transformation in such a short period of time can only be achieved with a strong support from the different players. And no one can feel this as a threat. You may feel that we are leaving behind something that was history and contributed to the prosperity of the country, and you can feel the pride of having helped for building this prosperity. But you need, as a citizen, as a worker, as a neighbor, some hope into the future, but also some very pragmatic short-term needs, such as employment or the wealth of the industry, the economy, living quite lively in your own neighborhoods, in your own territories. And this is not easy, because sometimes there is a different speed when talking about phasing in new technologies and phasing out old technologies, phasing in new opportunities and phasing out what it has been working up to now and it doesn't work up from now onwards. This deserves full engagement from politicians, and this deserves being on the ground. In less than 3 years, we have phased out 94% of our coal mining and coal production. And we have tried to do so through this broad dialogue and through different instruments that can convert and can show that some of the regulatory permitted decisions have a very important economic value. So to get these permits, to get this access to the grid, to evacuate new energy or whatever, we take into consideration the social and economic effects of what it can happen in these very concrete territories where we have defined that they are under the consideration of just transition territories because they have been phasing out these coal solutions. We have put in place concrete roundtables and concrete process to facilitate this conversation between the business community that wants to stay or wants to raise a new business opportunity in these territories, the neighbors, the municipalities, and the workers. And it has been quite useful, quite helpful, and I would say quite, as I said, emotional, because people tend to want to participate in the decision-making process on what future they want to build. And they have a very concrete idea on what it could be their add value to build this future. So I think that as administration, we need to facilitate the tools and the professional support to combine the different things that they may be needing, the different support capacities that they may be needing to build this into real concrete projects. And some of them will succeed, some of them will be refined, some of them may not succeed. But it is important to be sure that the social measures to come along with the workers, to support the workers, the involvement of the business community, so being part of the future also and not only being part of the past, and the involvement of the government, the authorities with social measures, fiscal measures, or this professional support is absolutely key. So we are in the middle of this process. We have 14 just transition areas, and for the time being, after these 3 years, there are many things that have been working in an incredible positive manner, and of course there is still some work to be developed and to achieve this full success in the time to be. But I would say that from a personal, professional, but human point of view, this is key, and there is no shortcut. We need to work with people, we need to build real projects on the ground, and we need to be sure that these real projects are what the different stakeholders think is the best option for their own present, for their own future.
Patrick Graichen, as far as policy is concerned, Germany's been very, very clear about this. You're moving towards climate neutrality by 2045, and you have a head start on other countries in making this transition. How are you working with groups that will be affected by a transition to a low-carbon economy? How are you making sure that it will be fair?
Well, first of all, let me just add to what Axel said. We are part of that exercise in South Africa, and we think that that is a great model, and that now needs to be rolled out to more countries. Because those just energy transition partnerships is what we need globally, with the focus on coal, because that is what, if you look at the next 10 years, If we want to stay below 1.5 degrees, and that is a tough job, then this is about getting the coal phase out organized in the industrialized world by 2030 and globally by 2040. Now, within Germany, we now have a coal phase out by 2030 as a government target. And we had a structural commission on this with, in essence, the result that those local communities where we still have coal mining, that they should basically get support for building new industrial bases so that they can still be an energy region, basically. Now, the other day I had people here from the company that is currently doing the lignite mining in East Germany, and we were discussing whether those fields can now be used for wind and solar. We already have the grid there, so we should be using it. And then it's not just about putting wind and solar there, but maybe also electrolysis so that you produce hydrogen. And then that is a region that becomes an energy hub of the future. And I think it's exactly those type of projects and thinking that we will need anywhere, whether that's an industrialized country or whether that's South Africa or whether that's Indonesia. We need to basically show that there is a future out there that is prosperous and green for those regions that currently depend on making money with fossils. Now, that's the coal issue. We have the same kind of discussion with the large car manufacturing industry in Germany. You know, we're famous for our automobiles, but they are mostly diesel and gasoline cars. And switching to building electric vehicles means different know-how. You need to basically produce different parts. It'll be much more also software driven. And it's in essence that type of clear vision where the story will need to go. Clear policy mix also in terms of helping the region with support. And then navigate through that structural change for those that currently make their money with either producing coal, oil, and gas or building the products that depend on coal, oil, and gas. So that's a huge challenge, and we need to get at it heads on and not think that it will move away.
Yeah, I mean, huge challenges, but some really concrete solutions there. My thanks to Axel van Trotsenburg, Teresa Ribera, and to Patrick Graichen. Now, to explore this theme a little further, Miriam Gray, Communications Lead for Sustainable Development at the World Bank, invited Her Excellency Rania Al-Mashat, Minister of International Cooperation for the Arab Republic of Egypt, to join her for a fireside chat.
Welcome, Madam Minister. My first question is around COP27. So Egypt will be hosting COP27 this November. It has been a difficult year with COVID pandemic still lingering in many countries and the war in Ukraine. This has led to concerns that we might have lost some of the momentum coming out of Glasgow. Can you tell us how are you approaching the COP to regain some of that momentum and what priorities Egypt will be championing in Sharm el-Sheikh? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. A very important question. The global backdrop has changed since Glasgow. Egypt's COP has three key messages. First, as president, of course, we're impartial, but adaptation and resilience are extremely important. And this was one of the outcomes of Glasgow, but we want to build on it. And the third key message, also building on what happened in Glasgow with the private sector engagement that took place, is how we can translate the pledges into implementation. When we take a look at the current war in Europe and how it's impacting populations everywhere when it comes to food security, it brings to the forefront the importance of adaptation projects, agriculture, irrigation, and the interlink between them. And therefore, it is, if we're trying to take a practical example of why we need to mobilize more resources into adaptation projects, this could not be a more fitting, real example. Countries need to be able to use their resources, water resources, very well, and also investments in adaptation projects, particularly agricultural projects that increase the produce, improve the seeds, and also improve the regional integration are quite key. And this is going to be a very important message during the upcoming COP, particularly Egypt being in Africa, and therefore many of the African countries are in need of this in a very important way. When we talk about moving from pledges to implementation, this is also quite important. Despite the issues that are taking place, there has been, again, a very important emphasis on the importance of the energy transition. And in some of the discussions we are having currently with our different financiers, development partners, MDBs, I asked them this question: is the current global context reducing the appetite for financing green projects? And the answer is no. Therefore, what we need to work on, and this is what we will be doing over the next few months until we go to Sharm el-Sheikh in November, is to try and see operationally how investable projects can be designed to ensure that the climate pledges, the finance pledges, can make their way to the countries that need it the most.
Thank you, Madam Minister. So Egypt was the first country in the Middle East and North Africa to issue green bonds. How has successful innovative financing tools such as green bonds helped Egypt to move forward with its climate agenda? And how do these financing tools like green bonds support Egypt's overall resilient economic recovery efforts? What would be your advice to other countries that want to follow Egypt's footsteps?
Thank you very much. A few points to highlight. First, our move to a green transition happened several years ago. And let me specifically mention our integrated sustainable energy strategy that was launched in 2015. For those who have not been following Egypt closely, in 2012, 2013, 2014, we had electricity outages. And this required a very detailed strategy to be able to change the energy mix, to move more towards renewables, solar plants and wind farms. But more importantly, government had to undertake structural reforms, such as price subsidy reforms, such as changing feed-in tariffs to allow private sector engagement. And once that happened, more private sector firms could fill in that space, and financing to the private sector in the renewable sector was attained. And I take an example of the Binban solar plant, which is one of the biggest so far. And it included public-private partnerships, it included private sector engagement. And because of the reforms that took place, different multilateral development banks and bilateral partners were able to finance the private sector. Now, projects such as the solar plants or the wind farms, just as examples on energy, and if I move forward and talk about sustainable transportation projects, the metro, and many others, these were the projects that could be used to underpin a green bond. So the green bond is an outcome of several years of a vision towards green transition, a vision towards designing projects that could be implemented either through public finances or with our development partners, bilateral or multilateral, to be able to anchor or be the inputs into a green bond. Of course, today the financing needs are, as you grow, you need more financing needs. And in that space, every country is trying to innovate as much as possible. Green bonds are one, SDG bonds is another, Sukuk is something else. So there's this space is important to tap into. So the government was extremely focused on issuing the green bond. And with the green bond also comes the importance of measurement, because investors in this space are trying to see the impact of their investment in the bond itself. So it also creates a whole movement within the government in terms of monitoring the impact of these renewable or green projects as part of the green bond contracts. So this is just to highlight a few examples. And I think that going forward, finding alternative sources is important. The word blended comes up over and over. And part of the Glasgow commitments was private sector wanting to invest in countries, but the risk in many of the countries that need it the most is high. And that's why multilateral development banks or philanthropy should be there to de-risk some of that private sector investment. And that's why also a key word in the financing landscape going forward is blended finance, but it also requires from the governments a clear vision of the projects that need financing, the projects that could be open to private sector investments, transparency when it comes to the different regulatory and structural reforms that the government will be undertaking. We have several stories, many examples. Egypt is very open to all MDBs and bilaterals. So we give a very strong example of multilateralism when it comes to collaboration, engagement, and international cooperation.
Thank you, Madam Minister. So, last question. The political economy of the energy transition may be particularly challenging for many countries, especially those that have fossil fuel resources that provide an important foundation for their domestic economy. I believe that this is something that the World Bank has been talking to Egypt about this year as we work together on Egypt's country climate and development report. So the question is, how is Egypt approaching the energy transition, and what do you think other countries will be able to learn from your experience?
Thank you very much. Yes, a very important concept today is that climate should not be seen as an objective in itself or sort of divorced from development. On the contrary, today, as we are designing strategies with our partners, again, being bilateral or multilateral, these strategies always include a green component. And therefore, as we are trying to push sustainable development, as we're trying to push growth, climate is an integral part of the design of projects, is an integral part of the ESG for private sector firms. So it's integrated in a government's vision and in government's projects. And therefore, the World Bank's country climate development report, the CCDRs, we're very happy that we are one of the pilot cases. And what we want to showcase is that climate action is a development story. Within it, you can see the different projects that are also creating jobs, the impact on skill needs, and also the quantifying the financing that is needed. Of course, for us, for example, on the electricity side, coal is not used, natural gas is. So there is and renewables today are a bigger size within the energy mix. And therefore, we have examples to show on how we moved in the green transition. And I believe that within the COP framework, different countries also trying to showcase what they are doing, what their NDCs are. It's a live conversation, and definitely negotiations around the principles of Paris Agreement and so forth will take place as well.
Thank you, Madam Minister. This was Rania Al-Mashat, Minister of International Cooperation of the Arab Republic of Egypt. Thank you so much for joining us, and over to you, Anita.
Thank you very much.
And now, we know that technology and innovation play a key role in enabling climate action, so we thought it'd be a really good idea to bring together more than 700 brilliant young minds for the Young Climate Innovators event in collaboration with Connect for Climate and the Global Youth Climate Network. They met yesterday. Let's hear some of what they had to say.
My name is Sarah Al-Harthi and I am from Saudi Arabia. For me, the climate fight to be called successful and can only be successful when we can see measurable outcomes from what the world have collectively pledged to do. Preventing average global temperature from rising to 1.5 Celsius through having forceful climate policies and grassroots level changes in behaviors and adopting the climate change as a cause would then, I would call it a successful fight, and we have seen the outcomes being realized.
So good to hear the voices of these young climate innovators. Over the coming days, we're going to hear a great deal about climate solutions that are already happening around the world in countries at all stages of development. So do come back for that. But for now, that's all from me. There'll be a short break before your workshops begin, so you've just about got time to drop into the marketplace and start making those all-important connections. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow for our second plenary in collaboration with the Carbon Pricing Leadership Coalition. We expect to hear how leaders are using carbon pricing to reach their decarbonisation goals. And remember, join our discussion. We really want to hear from you. But till then, have a good one.